Per me si va nella città dolente, per me si va nell'eterno dolore, per me si va tra la perduta gente. Giustizia mosse il mio alto fattore, fecemi la divina potestate, la somma sapienza e il primo amore. Dinanzi a me non fuor cose create se non eterne, e io eterno duro. Lasciate ogni speranza voi che intrate. Queste parole di colore oscuro vidio scritte al sommo d'una porta, perch'io, maestro, il senso lor metturo. Ed egli a me come persona accorta: qui si convien lasciare ogni sospetto, ogni viltà convien che qui sia morta. No siam venuti al loco vito detto, che tu vedrai le genti dolorose ch'hanno perduto il ben dell'intelletto. E poi che la sua mano la mia puose, con lieto volto ond'io mi confortai, mi mise dentro alle segrete cose. Quivi sospiri, pianti, alti guai risuonavan per l'aere senza stelle, perch'io al cominciar ne lagrimai. Diverse lingue, orribili favelle, parole di dolore, accenti d'ira, voci alte, fioche e suon di manconelle facevano un tumulto che s'aggira sempre in quell'aura senza tempo tinta, come l'arena quando turbo spira. E io, ch'avea d'error la testa cinta, dissi: maestro, che è quel chiodo e che gent'è che par nel duol si vinta? Ed egli a me: questo misero modo tegnon l'anime triste di color che visser senza infamia e senza lodo. Mischiate sono a quel cattivo coro degli angeli che non furon ribelli, ne fur fedeli a Dio, ma per sé furo. Caccian li ciel per non esser men belli, né lo profondo inferno li riceve, ch'alcuna gloria i re avrebber delli. E io, maestro, che è tanto greve allor che lamentar li fa sì forte? Rispuose: dicerolti molto breve, questi non hanno speranza di morte, e la lor cieca vita è tanto bassa ch'invidiosi son d'ogni altra sorte. Fama di loro il mondo esser non lassa, misericordia e giustizia li sdegna. Non ragioniam di lor, ma guarda e passa. E io che riguardai vidi un'insegna che girando correva tanto ratta che d'ogni posa mi parea indegna, e dietro le venia sì lunga tratta di gente chi non avrei creduto che morte tanta n'avesse disfatta. Poscia ch'io vebbi alcun riconosciuto, vidi e conobbi l'ombra di colui che fece per viltade il gran rifiuto. Incontenente intesi e certo fui che questa era la setta de cattivi, a Dio spiacenti e a nemici sui. Law and Philosophy in the third canto of Dante's Inferno. The third canto is, as just about everything else that Dante has ever written, seldom understood properly. Here we shall consider core problems that are addressed by Dante in this canto by focusing on the first part of the canto. We have seen the recital. It gives some sense of the gravity of the issues addressed. The canto opens notoriously with the door to the underworld. This door is the door of the law. Dura lex. The emphasis on the dura, on the harshness, which has a double sense of duration and of being harsh. Why is the law harsh? Because it doesn't consider things, if not eternally, as immutable. It doesn't consider the movement. It doesn't consider life as we experience it. It doesn't experience what we would call the particulars. It doesn't address them. It does not do justice, finally, to particular situations. The law is never an answer to our problems. It does not solve our problems. It responds to a situation, but it does not resolve that situation. What does it respond to? In this canto, we have those who do not seek truth in and through the law. These are the Epicureans, and they're mixed with the crowds of people. Ordinary people who are subject to the law and who are miserable by being subject to the law. Necessarily, because the law will never do justice to you. It can always be manipulated. It can be an instrument in this fallen world of the unjust. So the law is never going to settle any problem realistically in this world. Those who claim that it does are on the side of injustice. They're not on Dante's side. They're not on the side of poets. However, there are two types of poets. There are those Epicureans who seek truth aside from the law, aside, therefore, from the question of the good, and therefore aside from the question of virtue. They're indifferent to classical virtue, to the good of the intellect. The good of the intellect, meaning an intellect that is at once turned toward the good, its own good. The good is good for the intellect. And how does the intellect turn toward the good? It has the law at its disposal. It seeks the good through the law, or in the law as a mirror. It interprets the law as a mirror of truth. And therein it seeks the good, its own good. Its own good is not to depart from the law, to end up in a life without virtue, beyond good and evil, as moderns might put it. The good of the intellect, of mind, of reasoning, is ultimately found thanks to the law. Let us consider the words of the law. These words are hard. Again, they're hard for us because we are in the flesh. We are subject to the law. We are not born to be subject to the law. We are fallen into this world, and as a consequence of that, we are necessarily under the law. Permissiva nella città dolente. So here we enter through the law into the city of pangs. Pangs of suffering. The city is inadequate for man, and yet it's the place where we have strife, of course, polemos, where we have war. It is a place where we find ourselves in, and we try to come out, but we are somehow stuck in it. It is a dark place. Permissiva nell'eterno dolore. Again, this pain, these pains are eternal and eternalized by the law. Right? We are fixed in our situation by the law. Permissiva tra la perduta gente. La perduta gente, the people who has lost the good of the intellect. It is subject to the law, and therefore does not rise above the law to see what is beyond the law. What is beyond the law? Giustizia mosse il mio alto fattore, fecemi la divina potestate. Justice moved my lofty maker. There is an ambiguity here. Is it justice that moved my lofty maker, or is it the lofty maker that moved justice? In either case, there is a movement that is presupposed by the law. Although the law does not show it to you directly, because the law is simply focused on eternal things that don't move. What makes the law is another question. The prehistory, as it were, the preface, the origin, the genesis of the law. Divine power. Divina potestate. La somma sapienza e il primo amore. Divine power, you need a power, a motion, a movement that stems from the divine mind, the form of the universe. You need a supreme wisdom. There is an end to the law. The law is not just there for nothing. There is a supreme wisdom to its presence, a reason why the law is there. And a first love. This first love is a poetic love. It is a divine love. It is a care. Again, love not as a feeling at all. Here, that's not the point. But as a care, an active intervention, providence. So law is providentially there. If it weren't for providence, there would be no law. Law would simply be bad, tyrannical. And so the Epicureans would be right. Before the law, things were not created, if not, things outside, out there, were not created, if not eternal. And I endure eternally. E io eterno duro. The law, again, considers only what does not move. And it considers things outside there as not moving. That's not fair, we might say. You go to a trial in court, and you are treated as something static, whereas you're in movement, of course. So the law, obviously, in this respect, at least, cannot do justice to what is alive. Lasciate ogni speranza voi che entrate. If once you enter into the law says, do not hope to come out of the situation. You're under the law, do not hope to transcend it. If you seek guidance from the law itself, you won't find it. You need something else. You need Virgil. You need interpretation of the law. It is the interpretation of the law that will help you transcend the law, not the law itself. These words of dark color, obscured color, because the words, again, oscuro, when Dante says oscuro, that's tied to the selva oscura, right? Or the obscured, the darkened color of the words. The words are no longer comprehensible to us. We don't understand the words of the law. I saw them written, scripta. They're written. The law is written. And that's why it's harsh. Because once it's written, it doesn't, again, follow what is alive. It is fixed. And now I saw them on the summit of this door, of a door. It's, of course, the door of the law. And it's a door. It's a passage. We enter. There are those, however, who do not care about it. And so Dante will tell us through Virgil, we're not here to reason about these people. Keep an eye on them, check them out, and then pass. Ed egli a me come persona accorta, and he, Virgil, as a person who is watchful, who is attentive, who is thoughtful. Ogni viltà convien che qui sia morta. Every vile characteristic of man, right? Every vice should be dead here. The law does not accept any vice. Boccaccio and others in the Renaissance defend vice. Not in itself, of course. But look, there is frivolity, there are light aspects to life. We shouldn't attack people just because they're having some ice cream now, just because they're having a little, a little frivolity in their life here and there. The important thing is that this frivolity is recovered in the context of a telos, an end, a poetic life. But here Virgil warns, it is convenient to us to let go of every suspicion and to let every vice die. We need to purge ourselves in order to go through the law, to understand and to transcend the law. We need to kill all vice within us. Otherwise, we won't make it. And just as the law had said, let go of every hope, Virgil says, it is convenient to us to let go of every suspicion, and thus every fear, and fear is tied to hope. Let go of every hope? All right. Why? Because perhaps it is not well-founded. In our condition, our hope is not well-founded. It is not well-reasoned. We don't know why. So we let go of that, all of our fancy hopes. And at the same time, we let go of every fear. And that is key for Virgil. Why should you let go of these ordinary hopes? Because you want to get rid of fear. You want to let go of fear. And you cannot pursue the truth through the law as long as you are afraid of the law. So, follow the law, be lawful, because otherwise you have to be afraid of the consequences. Right? You're going to be subject to punishment. You don't want to worry about that. So you follow the law, and now you can be free from fear. Now you're ready to transcend the law. We have come to the place that I've told you about, where you will see the people in pain, again dolorose, again from the eterno dolore, città dolenti, those who are painfully subject to the law, who have lost the good of the intellect. They do not see the good intellectually, because for them all good is subject to the law, and so they seek to avoid the good and evil. They are Epicureans. They don't care about the good or the evil, in other words, virtue. They seek liberation from all of this, and yet they don't find it, because all they find is what is subject to the law, and they're miserable in spite of their delusion. They dream about being on their own. And so Virgil placed his hand on Dante's, and with a peaceful visage, right? His eyes are turning gently Dante toward something that comforts him. Right? They're comforting him. On Dio mi confortai. And he brings him within the secret things. So let us see what the law conceals. And it's horrible. This diversity of tongues, this chaos that is underlying this law that is quite tyrannical insofar as it is not interpreted. So for the miserable people of the city, the law is an imposition, a mechanical imposition that conceals the troubles of the city. All sorts of expressions of misery. He goes through these. People making a racket. And all of these miseries of man are turning in a vortex, right, that is as if timeless. It is managed by the law, timelessly. Sempre in quell'aura senza tempo tinta. Right? Always in that air, in that atmosphere, untainted by time. And again, the image of the vortex. Turbo. Right? But this is the problem. Dante sees this when his head is crowned by error. C'avea d'error la testa cinta. So what he's seeing is not what is really real, we could say. And he asks, therefore, Master, what is it that I hear? And what people appears to be one, thus, in pain, in suffering? Are we really conquered by it? Is that our destiny? Or is it merely an appearance? And so Virgil speaks of this miserable way that these poor souls have, these darkened souls, who live without infamy and without praise, in the sense of there is nothing praiseworthy about them. So they are you could say, the average person. But most importantly, what Dante is addressing is the philosopher, the poet philosopher, however you would like to put it, who is for himself, and who therefore does not seek truth in or through virtue. For him, virtue is just a mask, and then, you pursue truth. The law is public, a mask, and then in private you pursue truth, or rather, your truth. There's nothing to be reasoned about here for Virgil. They're mixed with that bad chorus of angels who were not rebellious, nor were they faithful to God, but were for themselves. This is the point. And so they're not worthy of the heavens. The heavens don't want them because they might stain the heavens. Not good enough for the heavens, and they're not bad enough for hell, because they would make the rei, the guilty, the really bad people, look better. They would say, hey, look, we're in hell, but there's these people here. It's not that bad. And Dante asks, but what is so grievous to them to make them complain so much? And he answers, I'll tell you very briefly, with a reference to an earlier canto. Very briefly. These do not have any hope of death, which is to say that they see no good beyond death, and so above the law. And their blind life is so low, and here there's a reference to the pie basso, so it's the virtue that has been diminished, that has been lowered, so they do not see the point to being virtuous. Virtue for them is just a manner of speech, it's just by convention. So their life is so blind, it's so low, and so devoid of virtue. They're blind. They're actually blind because they're not virtuous. You need virtue to see the truth in its proper place. So that they're envious of every other fate. And every other fate, again, this altra is often referring to the poetic. So they're against a kind of poetry that is virtuous. They're against all claims of virtue, attributions of virtue. Pride for them is completely, irrevocably, unqualifiedly bad. There's nothing good to be proud about. Right? The world does not let there be any fame of them. They're not acclaimed for anything great that they might have done. Right? Misericordia justitia lis degna. So there is no justification for their life. Right? We have nothing to feel sorry for them for. Right? So he says, let us not reason about them, but guarda, and here is guard yourself from this path and pass. And I guard myself back. In other words, I checked back and I said, all right, I see that's not the way to go. And I saw a sign, an insegna, that points to something, obviously, that turning was running so fast that it appeared to be unworthy, indegna, of every pause, of every stillness. So it's continuously moving. A sign. What is this sign? Under the banner. Right? of a language that is always moving, that never means one thing that is still. So obviously the law is out of the window for them. All of these people are continuously taken in a swirl, in a vortex. And behind this scene, behind this sign, came such a long lineup, right, of people that I would have never believed that death had undone. Undone so many of them. All of these people who lived for themselves have been undone by death. They did not seek something beyond death, and therefore they die in death. That's it. They're undone. They're unworthy of a name, either. And then I recognized one, and I saw and knew the shadow of he who made a great refusal out of vice, lack of virtue. Incontinente intesia certo fui. At once, without containment, without, you could say, reflecting, I understood, and I was certain that this was the sect of the bad, that do not please God or his enemies. So, they are, again, the Epicureans. And then we will move on, and we will find out that Caronte, right, the soul who carries the souls across the river, he says, well, no. He sees Dante and he says, this is only for the dead, not for those, therefore, who live towards the eternal or what is beyond the law. He says, the poets who are alive in poetry should not go through this. They should not go in this darkness. And Virgil responds, no, he's good. He is alive, he is a poet, but he seeks life and truth through the law. He is not an Epicurean who is like all other people, like the vulgar, the ones whom Beatrice had referred to as la vulgare schiera, the legions, or the vulgar legion, right, of people. And so, by the end of the Canto, we see that Dante is going to enter into this darkness, and he'll have to endure death. He'll have to penetrate to the heart of law and discover, well, the root of evil as it is addressed by the law, even though the law does not, under any circumstance, resolve that problem of evil. We need to penetrate to the core of the evil that is addressed by the law without its solving it, of course, in order to transcend both evil and the limitations of the law.